Wait a minute, are these guys trying to rip you off? What's going on, guys? Carter here with Edge Mindset. We're going to be tackling a bit of a topic video today. This was inspired by a comment on, I believe, my full collection video in regards to this particular knife right here, and I wanted to give my thoughts on it, provide a little bit of clarity in what I think is going on. This is a SMF from Strider Knives in a Tanto blade that is labeled as being hand ground. As you can see right there, it's got a nice hollow grind with those beautiful grind lines right there. And along those same lines, this is an XL double gunner grip, which also is stated as being hand ground. Now, the person that asked that question said, "Hey, Edged, Mr. Mindset, do you think this is really hand ground? If so, how would that work? Who's doing the grinding? What do you think is going on here?" And so I am here to give my opinion on this. Now, just as a disclaimer, this is just my thoughts. This is what I think. This is based on, it's based on my experience in the knife industry, as well as just being a part, an observant part of this world and manufacturing and things like that, as well as throwing in a little conjecture as well with the topic. So to answer it bluntly, do I think this is actually hand ground? I am going to say yes, absolutely. I don't doubt it for 1 second that this is a hand ground blade. And I'm going to explain why I think that's the case, as well as why I think if you're posing that question, you might be approaching it slightly incorrectly. When you're asking that question, I think you're kind of not necessarily thinking about it in the right frame of mind. So I'm trying to think of the best way to kind of jump into this. So for reference, we've got a machine ground blade. This one is from Riyadh as a manufacturer. This is a Chavez Redencion. As you can see, very similar, right? It's got those grind lines, and that just comes down to the grit of the grinding. Really, that's just a choice on how you want that to look, but it is hollow ground, just like the Striders here. However, this one is not done by hand. This one is fully machined. Now, what does by hand mean? I think some people are confusing by hand and freehand, right? They're two separate things. So I don't believe that these knives, and I could be wrong. This is me just guessing. I don't believe somebody's grabbing Strider blanks, marking them up, and then just taking these blades and freehanding these grinds. I don't think that's what's going on. More than likely what's happening is they have created a jig that holds these blades. They've created a way to precisely mark where the grinds are supposed to be. Then you train somebody to hold that jig, put it on the grinder, and they're basically just looking for that grind to hit that line, and then they're done. Still a lot of skill involved, don't get me wrong, but it's not the same as a craftsman taking a blank blade and doing free-handed grinding. Now, the next question, who is doing this grinding? Could be a lot of people. Could be Mick, could be Forrest, could be Josh. Maybe they actually outsource it to another group. I don't know. Could be somebody they hired. Really, anybody could be grinding these knives. Now, why would a knife ground by Mick not be marked as a custom? A lot of reasons for that. If people knew a particular knife was ground by Mick, it kind of loses that whole production kind of level. And so I could see potential where some of these are ground by Mick, and he's just kind of shooting through these knives and getting a bunch of these done and out the door. Possible. I have no idea. Possible. So you may be saying, well, why would a production knife like this one, like that's hand ground blade, that's pretty crazy, right? That's pretty expensive and all this stuff. Not really. Actually, this is the more expensive route. This right here is the more expensive route. Creating machining that is calibrated to do these grinds like this is a very, very big investment, and it only makes sense if you are producing thousands and thousands of units. There has to be quite a bit of numbers going out the door. Maybe not thousands and thousands, but a lot of units need to be going out the door for them to kind of calibrate these machines to properly grind all these by machine. These are not going out in those kind of numbers. Like, they didn't make 600 of these. They didn't make 1,000 of these. They made a few dozen of these. So it makes far more sense to do a more lo-fi version, create a custom jig, train some people on how to grind the blades, and then go at it. And as you can see, it's not perfect either. If you take a look at this point right here, see how it's back from kind of the intersection point right there, whereas on this side, it goes all the way to that intersection point. To me, that screams hand ground, right? I haven't actually looked super close on this one. It doesn't quite have the markings, but you can see, let's check. We're checking together. There's where the point ends. It doesn't quite touch the intersection of the compounds. And this one is pretty even, but you can see this one's a little bit shorter. This one's back a little bit further. Very good, very close, but not exactly perfect. Whereas if you take one, if we can focus, if you take one like this, take a look at it, it's pretty much perfect. I mean, that alone is indicative that there's some sort of person involved in the grinding of these blades, because it's very hard to hand grind a blade exactly symmetrical on both sides by hand. You have to be really, I mean, even the best knife makers don't always pull it off on every single knife, right? It's just, it's kind of that hand touch, right? It means that somebody, a human, touched this knife, whereas this one's fully done by machine, which is why it's essentially perfect, right, on both sides. Some people prefer this, right? Some people like the perfection. Some people like something that is indicative of a human hand touching that knife and being a part of it. Just up to you. I appreciate both. I really love both of these knives. I love that somebody held these blades and their skill allowed them to create these beautiful grinds right here. But I also appreciate kind of perfection and no surprises and that kind of thing. So, all right, so that is my opinion. Do I think these are actually hand ground? Absolutely true. Let me know down below in the comments. You know, I really appreciate it when you guys leave comments, you interact. It allows me to, do video responses and gives me ideas for videos. Case in point, this whole video was due to somebody leaving a comment, gave me the idea, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to jump on and talk about it. But comment down below if my case, I guess you could say, if my perspective that I presented here was at all convincing, if it seems like that I know, not that I know what I'm talking about, but that the stance I'm taking is based on some potentially true information. Do you believe that these knives are hand ground, or do you think they're machine ground? Like I said, the biggest case for this is I don't think Strider would make an investment to create machines that could hand grind this Tanto right here just to produce a few dozen knives. It just doesn't make sense from a cost standpoint to make an investment in doing that. This would need to be a full production run with these, and these hand ground blades are pretty rare-ish and pretty limited. They only do a few different models a year that feature this, and in fact they went a number of years without really doing any, so not all that common. All right guys, thanks for tuning in. Take care. I am out of here.